Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Michael had always been an observant man. Not the type who talks a lot, but one of those who notice things through gestures, tone of voice, the way someone closes their eyes when they smile or how they twitch the corner of their mouth when lying. And that's what first alerted him. He didn't have concrete proof, no scandal, no overheard conversations. He just had an accumulation of small things. Jennifer started responding after long moments of silence. He'd ask a simple question, and the answer would come, after a pause. As if she were somewhere else and only returned out of obligation. During dinner, which used to be a time for conversation, sharing small victories and frustrations from the day, there was now only the sound of cutlery clinking against plates. He'd talk about something that happened at work and, when he finished, would look at her expecting some comment. But she'd only nod, without even lifting her eyes. That hurt more than an argument because it showed disinterest. Her absence, even while present, felt like a stone lodged in his chest that wouldn't budge. One night, he told a funny story about a new coworker who had gotten into trouble with the boss. At the very least, he expected a smile. Jennifer got up from the table in the middle of the story and went to put her plate in the sink, saying she needed to sleep early. It sounded like a silent goodbye. Michael stayed there, sitting, staring at the empty chair. He tried to convince himself that maybe she was just tired. But deep down, he knew there was more. The way she fiddled with her phone, hiding the screen. The new perfume. The change in clothes, more carefully chosen, even on days when they weren't going out together. And cruelest of all, the hug that used to be tight was now just a quick touch, devoid of intention. One Saturday afternoon, he suggested a walk in the park, like they used to do in the early days of their marriage. Jennifer hesitated. She said she had some errands to take care of. He insisted, she agreed, but spent the whole time distracted, looking at her phone and replying to messages. When he mentioned it, she said it was work-related. But there was no urgency in her gaze. It was a cold excuse. On the way back, inside the car, the silence between them stretched so long it seemed to scream. And Michael understood that the distance had already moved past the stage of doubt. It was a certainty. There was one specific day that stuck in his mind. A Sunday night. He ordered food from their favorite restaurant and put on a movie she used to like. She came home later than usual, dropped her bag on the couch, and said she wasn't hungry. She went straight upstairs to the bedroom. Michael stayed there, with 2 plates served, a bottle of wine opened, and the remote in his hand. For a few seconds, he thought about going upstairs and asking what was going on, but he held back. It was as if he already knew that any attempt to get closer would only highlight the distance. At work, his colleagues started asking if everything was okay at home. He'd smile and say yes. No one needs to know, he thought. But when he got home, the atmosphere felt strange. Jennifer spoke little, avoided touch, and seemed eager to leave. Sometimes she'd say she was visiting her mother but took longer than usual. Michael avoided confrontations because deep down, he wanted to believe it was just a phase. But deep down, deeper still, he knew he was losing someone who was already leaving silently. One night, he woke up with a premonition. He turned to the side and saw that Jennifer wasn't in bed. He went to the living room. There she was, sitting, her face illuminated by the light of her phone. As soon as she noticed his presence, she quickly locked the screen and forced a smile. She said she was watching a video. He didn't comment, but he saw the name on the locked screen that would stay etched in his mind, Daniel. He went back to bed without saying a word. In the morning, she made coffee as if nothing had happened. But he no longer saw the same person in front of him. It was someone saying goodbye in dozes, erasing their tracks so as not to leave traces. He still tried to reignite something. He bought tickets to a play, left a sweet note in her bag, tried to surprise her with dinner. But her reactions were lukewarm, distant, mechanical. She thanked him with a soulless smile, the kind you give to a waiter bringing the bill. And that was the end of the attempt. Michael understood, even though it hurt. Sometimes, the biggest sign that love is over isn't a fight, blatant betrayal, or scandal. It's the silence. The vacant gaze. The way the person stops trying. And he, even though broken inside, began to prepare. Without making a fuss, without drama. He kept that silent pain to himself and continued living while observing the slow departure of the woman he once loved with everything he had. He knew that when the goodbye came, he would have already said his goodbyes long before. Inside. In silence. She waited for him to finish washing the dishes. The sound of the water falling, the friction of the plate with the sponge, the silence between them. Jennifer remained standing at the entrance of the kitchen, gripping her phone tightly. Michael noticed she was there but didn't turn around. He just kept doing what he was doing, as if that dishwashing were the last thread of normalcy between them. When he finished, he dried his hands, turned around, and faced her. She was still wearing the same beige coat she wore when going to work, and her eyes looked more tired than usual. What he didn't expect was the sentence that came next, delivered simply, as if handing over an envelope in silence and waiting for the other person to read it alone. "I'm involved with someone." The sentence came out smoothly, raw, without hesitation. Michael stood there, frozen, as if the air around him had turned to glass. She added, "It's Daniel, it happened by accident." He breathed slowly, looked away for a moment, then turned back to face her. He didn't ask for details. He didn't ask since when. He just looked at her and then at the floor, as if listening to his own soul shattering inside. His body stayed still, but his thoughts raced. She kept talking, trying to explain what was impossible to explain. That she felt confused. That she hadn't planned it. That it just happened. In Michael's mind, everything blurred, the name, the faintly remembered face of Daniel from her social media, the recent smiles she gave during phone calls, the days she said she was handling company matters, the different perfume. Now it all made sense, but in a brutal way. Jennifer went to the bedroom and started putting clothes into a small suitcase. He stayed in the living room, still motionless, still trying to understand how everything could end like this, without yelling, without tears. Just a short sentence, a suitcase being closed, and the sound of the zipper. She came back with the suitcase handle in her hand. She only took the essentials. A pair of jeans, 2 shirts, a toiletry bag, a book she liked to reread occasionally, and her favorite coat, the one Michael had bought for their 3rd wedding anniversary. She put it on without saying anything else. Before leaving, she paused for a second near the door, as if waiting for a reaction, a plea, "Stay." But he said nothing. He just watched as she walked away, carrying the end of a story. The following days were a sequence of broken habits. Her side of the bed remained untouched. The cup she used for tea stayed in the same place, unused. The drawer where she kept her makeup seemed emptier than he remembered. The messages started arriving on the 2nd day. "I hope you're okay." Then came, "I thought about us today." And then, "Maybe I messed everything up." Michael read them but didn't respond. Until, in a moment of impulse, he sent just 2 words, "Take care, Jennifer." After that, he turned off the notifications. There was no rush, no anger. Just a decision beginning to form inside him. At work, he avoided discussing what was happening. Only a close colleague, Darren, noticed his different demeanor and asked if everything was okay. Michael hesitated but ended up telling him. Darren, divorced for 3 years, recommended a reliable lawyer. He said the lawyer was discreet, direct, and experienced with separations. Michael took the number, saved it, and thought about it for 2 days before calling. When he scheduled the meeting with the lawyer, he felt like he was taking control of the situation. It wasn't about revenge. It was about control. About not sinking into what she had done. The lawyer explained the processes, asked for documents, and inquired if there would be any contestation. Michael responded that he didn't think Jennifer would fight against it. She had already left, both physically and emotionally. Back at home, he began organizing things. Not impulsively, but almost as a ritual. He separated the marriage papers, the lease contract, the joint bills. Everything that once symbolized a union was now just paper. He noticed some of her clothes were still in the closet. A shirt she slept in, a skirt he always complimented, a few books. He grabbed a box and started packing everything. One by one, without rushing, but firmly. That same night, she sent a longer message. She talked about missing him. She said she remembered the trip to Colorado, the jokes in the car, the surprise dinner he prepared when she got a promotion. She said that with Daniel, everything was very different, and that maybe she had idealized her feelings too much. She said she never meant to hurt him. And ended with, "I miss you, Michael." He reread it several times. He thought about responding. But he chose to sleep instead. When he woke up, he went to the bathroom mirror and looked at himself. He looked different. Thinner, more serious. But also more whole. He called the lawyer again and scheduled the next meeting. He had already made a decision. The separation process wasn't just legal. It was emotional. And he had already started the divorce the moment she said she loved someone else. The rest was just formalities. The meeting happened on an ordinary afternoon, without great expectations, without the mood for reconciliation, without promises of understanding. Jennifer had asked to talk in person. She sent a message saying she needed to see Michael, that she needed to sort things out. He took 2 days to respond. He simply said, "We can talk." He chose a time when he knew the cafe would be emptier, not out of fear of being seen with her, but because he wanted to listen calmly, without distractions, without curious faces around. She arrived a few minutes early and chose a table by the window. When he entered, she already had a glass of water in her hands, swirling the ice back and forth as if it could ease her anxiety. Michael sat across from her, crossed his arms, and waited. Jennifer started by thanking him for agreeing to meet. She avoided looking him in the eye during the first few sentences. She said she had reflected a lot in recent days, that things with Daniel were different from what she imagined, and that memories of the life they built together wouldn't leave her mind. Michael listened in silence, expressionless. He didn't want to interrupt. He wanted to understand what she was really seeking with this. She said she had made a mistake. That she let herself get carried away by a phase of confusion, that she was vulnerable, and that in Daniel, she found a kind of attention that, at the time, she thought she needed. But now, with everything in perspective, she could see how much she had lost. She made a move to hold his hand but stopped midway. She said she still loved him, that she regretted, and that maybe there was still a chance to start over. It was at that moment that Michael took a deep breath, leaned back in his chair, and spoke for the first time since he arrived. His voice came out calm but firm. He said this conversation should have happened before she walked out the door with her suitcase. That she had made choices, and he had accepted those choices as a final point. He told her that since the moment she left, he hadn't been waiting. That he didn't beg, didn't question, and didn't humiliate himself. He acted. He moved on. And her absence became space for his reconstruction. Jennifer tried to interrupt, saying she understood, that she had suffered too. Michael, with a steady gaze, responded that he understood the regret, but that it wasn't enough to piece together something that had been so easily thrown to the ground. He said, "When you left, I didn't fight to stop you. It wasn't for lack of love, it was for dignity. I knew that if I had to beg you to stay, the relationship was already lost." She fell silent, gripping her own hands tightly. He opened his backpack and pulled out a folder. He placed it on the table. Inside were the divorce papers. Already signed by him, with the information organized, the terms decided. She stared at the papers for a while, in shock. She asked if he was really willing to end it. Michael replied, "You thought my silence was weakness. But it was a decision." The sentence cut through the air like a blade. Her eyes widened, she leaned back in her chair, and said she needed more time, that maybe they could start over slowly. Michael said he had already given her enough time. That the silence between them, the empty gazes, the hollow messages she sent after leaving, all that was time. Enough time for him to realize he deserved more. He added that he couldn't build anything on a foundation she herself had demolished. And at that moment, he saw the realization hit her. The look that was once pleading turned into acceptance. She picked up the papers with trembling hands, said she needed to read them carefully, and he nodded briefly. She got up before him. She left the cafe without saying another word, holding the folder close to her chest. Michael stayed seated for a few minutes, looking out the window. There was no anger, no resentment, no sadness. Just the certainty that he had done the right thing. It was strange to see the end so clearly, but at the same time liberating. For the first time in a long while, he felt the story was truly over. And now, for the first time, the story that mattered most was his. The following months were marked by silence, but a different kind of silence. A light silence that no longer hurt. Michael felt as if he had stepped out of a tight space, a corridor where he had been walking in circles. Mornings regained meaning. He started waking up without that anguish trapped in his chest. He drank coffee calmly, without checking his phone for a message from her, without rehearsing conversations that would never happen. Everything became simpler because he stopped expecting something to return to how it was. He gradually understood that what was lost didn't deserve to be chased back. The house, once marked by painful memories, underwent subtle changes. Not a renovation to erase the past, but an adaptation to reflect the new chapter. Michael removed the wedding photos from the shelf, not out of anger, but with respect. He stored them in a box, along with other things that were part of that life. He redesigned the spaces. Moved the sofa, painted one of the walls, bought a new lamp. And in this process, he didn't try to hide from the pain. He moved through it. Because that's what he needed, to keep moving forward. He started going out more with coworkers. Accepted invitations to dinners, bowling nights, even events he used to decline. He let himself be carried by these new interactions, but without rushing to fill the space that was once hers. He was relearning to enjoy his own company, to laugh without guilt, to listen to music without remembering someone. He bought a new notebook and resumed writing down thoughts, fragments, loose sentences that reflected his rebuilding. On one of those nights of writing, he found himself reading old excerpts of letters never sent. One, in particular, stayed tucked in the desk drawer. It was for Jennifer, but it was never mailed. In the letter, he wrote about what he felt when she left, how he noticed every step she took toward distancing herself. He talked about the fear of not recognizing himself after the pain. But he also talked about liberation. About the moment he stopped blaming himself for everything, when he realized that love doesn't survive where there's contempt. He folded the letter carefully and stored it, like someone preserving an important chapter that has already been read. Her absence, which once weighed like chains, was now free space. Michael began to value the small things, a quiet afternoon with a book, an unexpected call from an old friend, the pleasure of cooking a new dish, the peace of a walk without a destination. And all of this was new, even if it seemed mundane. Because for the first time, he was living without fear of being left behind. Not out of pride. But because he had learned to choose himself. One random Saturday, while pushing his cart through the supermarket, he saw her. Jennifer was in the cleaning products aisle, alone. Her hair shorter, her eyes more alert, but still with that way he knew so well. She saw him, and for a few seconds, they hesitated. They approached each other, exchanged a brief "hi." She commented on how fast time had passed. He smiled politely, without carrying anything beyond courtesy. They briefly talked about her mom's dog, about an aunt who had fallen ill. Things that were once part of their routine now seemed to belong to another life. Before saying goodbye, she said, "You seem well." Michael thanked her. And with sincerity, he replied, "I am." She gave a faint smile, and they went their separate ways. He didn't look back. He didn't feel the urge to. Because in that moment, he realized what he had most wished for had happened: he had moved on. And it wasn't sudden. It was gradual. Like a room slowly brightening throughout the day, without fanfare. He left the market with a full bag, but a light heart. What Jennifer never knew was that on that same day, Michael decided to open the box where he had stored everything of hers. He took out the photos, the letter, the birthday cards, and put them all into an envelope. He thought about burning it, then about throwing it away. But in the end, he simply left the envelope on the shelf. As if to say, "This existed, but it no longer defines me." It was the closing of a chapter. No applause, no cinematic scenes, no romantic reunions. It was about maturity. About learning to emerge whole from something that almost destroyed him. Michael understood that the greatest victory wasn't winning someone back but not losing himself trying to fix what was already beyond repair. He learned that being left didn't diminish him. That the end of a relationship didn't mean the end of his own story. On the contrary. It was just the beginning of the most important part of it. And that's how he moved forward. In peace. Without drama. Without needing to prove anything to anyone. Just living with dignity. Choosing every step. Recognizing his worth. Because sometimes, the greatest act of strength is moving forward, even when the heart still remembers. But no longer asks to go back. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.